Alright, welcome to this centered code training video about setting your account defaults. We're going to have a special focus on localization options and a couple of formatting options that you've got for your personal accounts. Alright, so moving forward in this video, we're going to talk about how to enable geographic reporting. We're also going to talk about the default location and time zones for your accounts, and we're going to talk about some additional localization options beyond just these particular settings. Now, in terms of the Veridian community, we're talking about the configuration section before we get into the toolbox, or especially before launching your community. You want to get these items set up before you move forward. And getting right into it, we're going to talk about the geographic settings. User account settings allows you to enable the geographic reporting, which is actually independent from any other geographic-based questions you might have in the contact settings, for instance, something like that. Users providing the country in this section, in their initial account creation, for instance, will actually allow you to utilize geographic reporting that shows heat maps, effectively, of where all your users are located. If you think you might plan on using geographic reporting, you'll definitely want to have this checkbox turned on during launch. Additionally, utilizing the default country and time zone is enabled here. So you can set the default country to where the system will attempt to auto-detect based on the user's IP, or if you know that you're going to be testing, for example, in Japan, then you can set the default country to Japan and it'll automatically be set that way. Your users won't have to modify that at all. Same thing with time zone. At the time of this video, our server time is Pacific, so GMT -8. If you have something more reasonable or more appropriate for your particular implementation, you can adjust that default time zone that way. Alright, then after we dig into the geographic reporting, we're going to talk about the special case localization options. Some of those items include alternate names, middle initials, formatting the user account page to be more easily read with those options enabled, and finally we're also going to talk about using string sets for localization. Alright, that said, go ahead and jump into your community and access those user account settings as part of your community configuration toolbox. You can see the different options listed out here. You have, of course, the locale options of including the alternate first and last names, the Japanese style stag names, and I'll show you a demonstration of what these look like in a moment. The enable countries checkbox there, that corresponds to geographic reporting. You can check that on or off. Displaying the default country section, you can choose your default country from the list or allow it to auto detect. Again, same thing with time zone, you just set the default and that's how it's represented for your users. Alright, that said, let's go ahead and take a look at this particular user's account settings. So their personal account settings, I have a tab open for, so we'll access that. So you can see this is how your users will adjust their settings. It's very similar to how they initially set up their account. So you can see the list on the top there. You've got your first and last name. You've also got the time zone and country set. Now again, those were set as the default United States and Pacific time zone, so the user never had to change them. You can adjust those accordingly. Pay close attention to the name section though. We're actually going to change a few things here for the localization options. Now, so say your users have an English name and a local name, so whatever language they particularly speak. For instance, we see a lot of times this used for the Japanese communities. So jump back into account settings, enable alternate first and last names and the Japanese stacked, hit submit, and so you can see the change made there. They have the full secondary name, full primary name, and that allows you to have, for instance, an English name or a name in English characters and a name in kanji. Now, if we were to utilize the middle initial, for instance, if your community was getting quite large and you needed another field to help differentiate your users from one another, then you could utilize that middle initial field. It'd pop up right there in the middle. So now let's talk about what string sets mean for localization. Jump back to your community tools. Scroll down to your string sets. Normally you think of strings as being able to change any particular line of text in an implementation. So for example, anything as detailed as even saying home in the top left nav bar, you can actually change that text. Now what that means for localization is that you can have a customized language-based string set which displays an entire implementation in whatever language you choose. Most simply done, you'll have your language string set and your English string set, and you can apply any particular string set to any particular project. So you can have a Japanese project and a Spanish project in addition to keeping your community in English, for example. Any combination of those things, much like visual themes, you can overlay them individually, or you can have it throughout the entire community. So with that knowledge, that pretty much wraps up this video on personal account settings and localization. In this video, we talked about enabling geographic reporting. We also talked about how to set the default location and time zone for your user account creation. And then we also considered some additional localization options, including string sets and those different name formats. We got another video coming up soon, so stay tuned.